night or the day I found out my husband was killed. So I guess I should let y'all know like how we met and stuff. So I graduated high school in like 2010. My first time seeing him was at I remember this so vividly. Like, it was at 9th grade orientation, I believe, and I see him. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I'm in love. He was so tall. Like, I love tall guys. So he was 6'4", and he had these like honey eyes. And I looked at my sister. I was like, that's gonna be my husband one day, watch. And I really believed it. Like, I was just like, I don't know, it was something very special about him. So I never said anything to him. I just kind of looked and was like, yeah, he cute. Then we never really had any classes together because I had honors in like college courses, and we just never had any classes together because he was like, he had the regular classes. No shade. But anyway, he until 10th grade. 10th grade, they had made some kind of rule where you had to have a foreign language in order to graduate. And we both ended up being put in the same Spanish class. So, unbeknownst to me, I walked to the Spanish class and I see him sitting at the desk. I'm like, there go my future husband in my head. And when he saw me, he was like, hey, you know, you the girl with a name like mine. Because his name is Zarel and my name is Sherelle. Well, I was like, yeah, I was acting like I didn't really care for him because, number one, I need you to know how I feel about you. Like, I ain't no groupie. Because he was kind of popular, and he played basketball, like, but he was real funny. Anyway, so, number one, I didn't want him to know how I feel like, what I felt like. And number two, at the time, I lived with my mother, who we were Christian, and at her church, they were teaching that dating is wrong. And at the time, I believed along with them, and I wanted to remain true to that. And I knew how I felt about him, so I felt like I needed to deflect. Like, and in order to do that, I was mean, which I shouldn't have been mean, especially as a Christian. Like, that's not God. But that's the only way I knew to like let him leave me alone, because his smile would have broke me down. So I needed him to leave me alone. So I was like the Christian girl at school that passed out scriptures every day. I prayed with people. I was super modest in my apparel, and I just tried to stay away from him. So I would like laugh at his jokes or whatever. We became pretty cordial, but I was staying away. Well, fast forward to 12th grade, and I finally decided within myself, I'm like, okay, I am going to, I felt myself like moving away from God because I was a virgin. I was trying to do things the right way, and I just felt like I didn't really experience life. What are you doing? Stop. I'm serious. Mama. Stop.
Remember what Daddy?
That was my son. Our son. One of them. Anyway, so what was I saying? Okay, so fast forward to 12th grade, and I started feeling like I wanted to move away from God because I wanted to date and I wanted to like do the things my friends were doing, and I felt like I was missing out. So I was slowly but surely kind of like moving away from God. Then I started to play volleyball. Now, he played basketball, I played volleyball. So we used the same gym. So we would always end up hanging out after practice until our parents came to pick us up. And so we started to talk more every single day. So I'm falling. And I'm falling deep. Because we having these long talks about life, about our parents, I'm telling him how I felt spiritually. Like, I'm telling him about my past, about my daddy. Like, my daddy was in prison for 17 years and my mom did 6. So it was so much about me that I just was holding in, and I had a lot of hurt and a lot of pain, and I felt very neglected. So I hadn't really shared that with a lot of people, but I was talking to him about it, and I felt so comfortable. He was like an amazing listener, and he separated after we both decided to be a Christian. You know where my phone keeps. After we both decided to be Christians or whatever. But for a year we did not have sex, and we just tried to separate and just kind of focus on God and having a relationship with him, because we were told that's what we need to do by the church. That's a whole nother topic, another story for another day about church. But then one night he and I was celebrating like the anniversary of our dating anniversary, and we decided to have sex. We had sex inside of marriage, and we felt so bad afterwards. And we skipped church. It was a Wednesday. Like, we went to church faithfully. We would go every Wednesday, every Friday, every Sunday. Like, that was our community. That was our family. That's what we did. So we both missed church that night because we felt bad. And then we started talking to each other, and we were both like, we're grown. We love each other. We love God. What are we waiting for? He was like, I feel like you're my wife. I feel like he was my husband, because I feel like it from day one anyway. But he was like, let's get married. Let's start our lives. Let's do this. And so I'm like, heck yeah, okay. So we decided to get married, and we were told that we had to tell the church. So we had to get up in front of the church and tell them that, number one, we fell in sin. After a year of not having sex and actually being faithful to not having sex, he still would come over. He still would like come to my dorm, and we was talking and texting, but we were not having sex because we knew that it was wrong. But we had to get up there and tell them, which, again, that's a whole other story. And none of them wanted us to get married. Like, it was like an uproar. They was like, y'all should not get married for sex. But that wasn't the point. Like, that wasn't why we were getting married. We were getting married because on top of the fact that we wanted to have sex, we loved each other and we loved God. Like, period, point blank. So even my mama was in the church at the time. Well, my mom was in the church, and she was like, no. But her opinion was a bit of both. Hers was like, you know, she's too young to get married. On top of all that, she made a big deal. But anyway, I basically told my mama, it's gonna happen with or without you, so you might as well show up. And she did. She showed up. We got married May 19th, 2012. That was the happiest day of my life. Like, I just remember being on a high. Like, I just couldn't stop smiling. Like, my husband felt like home to me, and I had never had a real stable home. Like, it felt like I was finally at a point in my life where I was free. Like, I could be my complete 100% self with my husband. Like, the stupid, crazy stuff that I would do. Like, everything. He was everything and more. So after I got married, we were on a high. And we were married for 8 years. And we had 3 beautiful children. 3 beautiful boys. And we had a beautiful marriage. There was no cheating, no playing around. We didn't keep stuff from each other. It was beautiful. Like, looking back, like, while I was in it, you know, hindsight is always 20/20. It just felt like everyday life. Okay, we good, we going home, and go to work, pick the kids up, come home, cook dinner, go to work. Like, it was a routine, but it was stable. And it was no hurt. It was no pain. It was no wondering if this man is cheating on me. It was no wondering if this man finna put his hands on me. This man loved God. He loved God more than he loved me. So in return, that made him love me more. That made him faithful to me because he cared about what God thought of him. And we would pray together, fast together. Like, it was a beautiful marriage. And I'm so grateful for the experience and that I was chosen by him. So, 8 years, 3 beautiful baby boys. And the night became January 1st, 2020. He had went to Bible study. I stayed home because I had to finish cleaning up. And I was like, I'll just come to church Sunday. He left, and we had gotten like a small argument, and we never said goodbye without saying I love you. And he did that day. I didn't even know he was gone until I looked outside and saw the car was gone. I'm like, dang, he left without saying I love you. He must be real mad. That joint was petty. Like, why wouldn't you say bye? I was like, okay, we'll see when he get home. And then church was over. He called me, and he said, what you want to eat for dinner? And I was like, I want Toonies. It's the chicken place right by our church. And he was like, I just passed there. The line long, ready to come home. I was like, please. And he was like, no, I'm ready to come home. He was like, I'm real tired. I'm like, okay, fine. Go to Steak and Shake. Because that was right by our house. So he was headed to Steak and Shake. Oh, wait, okay. So when he called me from church, after church let out, he called me. He FaceTimed me the first time. And as soon as I answered, we talked for like 2 seconds and the phone hung up. I'm like, dang, the phone must have died. Then he called back like 3 minutes later, and he was like, my bad, the phone died, I just put on a charger. And so I was like, oh, okay. Then that's when he proceeded to ask me about what I wanted to eat. So after we hung up, he said, all right, I'll see you when I get home. I love you. And I said, I love you too. Time goes by. I remember I was watching Grey's Anatomy, and I had my pajamas on. I'm like, dang, we hung up around 9:40 something. It's almost 11 o'clock. Why is he taking so long? So I called him back, and the phone immediately went to the voicemail. And I'm like, my heart immediately dropped, y'all. Like, I just knew at that moment, like, I knew his heart stopped beating. I don't know what it was, but I just felt like something was wrong. So I Googled accidents near me. It said Arlington Expressway, 1 injured, 1 dead. And it had nothing else on there. Like, that was the title of the article. It didn't have any information in between. It was just Arlington Expressway, 1 injured, 1 critically injured, 1 dead. And I just like fell to the floor, and I had never had a panic attack before. I heard of them, and honestly, I thought that I didn't think they were fake. I thought people were exaggerating, but that was the first time I had ever felt like I couldn't breathe, but I heard myself breathing, and I was like, oh my God, this is him. So I called my sister. I'm like, Trey, I think my sister's name is Trey. I said, Trey, I think something happened to Zarel. Like, can you please, like, I was just going crazy. And she hung up in my face. And she was like, I'm coming. So she came to my house to wait with me. Then I called my best friend. I'm like, I think something happened to Zarel. And this one I knew I played too much. Because she was like, girl, bye. And she hung up too. And I'm like, oh my God, no, I'm serious. Like, he hasn't answered my phone calls. I haven't heard from him. Like, you all know that's not like him. So she's like, okay, I'm coming over. So they all came over. Then I called like 911, the emergency line. And I'm like, hey, I just seen an article. I'm just trying to see if I can get any more information. I think this may be my husband. And they were like, okay, they took my information down. It's like, somebody will come, I'll contact you if something comes up. I'm like, okay. So at this point, I'm like, let me call his mama. I just wanted to make sure that, like, he really wasn't answering before I contacted her. So I called her. I'm like, hey, I think something happened to Zarel. She was like, huh? Okay, I'm going to ride by there. And I told her the story. She was like, I'm going to ride by there. So she drove by the site, and she was like, that's not your car. But in my head and in my heart, I'm like, she just don't want to believe it. I didn't have all the proof, but I just was like, I felt it. Like something inside I felt, oh, I'm gonna do. I told his mama. She drove by. She said, that's not your car. And I was like, she just don't want to know. She don't want to believe it. So, because like I just knew in my soul something happened to him. And I just like, oh, okay. I just let her kind of, you know, have her moment until something was told to us. I was just like, I'm not gonna try to do anything. So I hung up with her, and I just was back with my friends and my sister that came to my house. So I'm calling a 911 emergency line. Nobody's telling me anything. So finally I decided to go on Facebook, because I know from using Facebook that news outlets put stories on Facebook as well. So I go on Facebook and I see the story, the same article that I saw on Google, but there was no picture and there was no comments. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the comments, trying to refresh every 5 seconds. I'm refreshing. Comments start rolling in, and I finally see a comment from a woman, and it says, I was there when the man passed. Prayers to his family. And my heart sank. I'm like, oh my God, like, Jesus, please don't let this be my husband, God, please. And I commented on her comment. I was like, hey, can you tell me what kind of car it was or what the guy had on? And she was like ignoring my comment and commenting at the other people comment. So I finally was like, hey, I think this may be my husband. Can you please tell me what kind of car it was and what he had on? So she commented back almost immediately, and she was like, it was I can't remember what kind of car it was because it was messed up, but he had on green basketball shorts and Nike slides. When she said Nike slides, I almost fell out, because that's literally all he wore. Like, he would throw his slides on with any and everything. That was all he wore. And I'm like, oh my God. But she said the wrong color shorts. So it was like that slither of hope of, okay, maybe it's not him. I'm just clinging to everything that would tell me like my husband is still alive. So again, I'm refreshing, hoping to see some pictures or something, like, so I can confirm that this is my husband, because I'm not getting any information from the police or the emergency line. Finally, they post a video, and I'm like, that's my car. But I really wasn't sure, because it was like kind of crunched up. They ended up having to use the jaws of life. My husband was 6'4", and it was a small car. So again, like, those doubts in the back of my head is just like holding on to, no, it's not him. Don't think that. But my heart is saying it's him. So by this time, we haven't heard from him. My house is full of people now, because, you know, my best friend and my sister was like reaching out to people to see if maybe they heard from him. And everybody's coming to my house to kind of just figure out what the heck happened to Zarrell. Like, where is he? It's almost 12 o'clock. And, ooh. It's almost 12 o'clock. And I see police lights pull up. Now, we all seen the movies of what happens when the police come. And I'm thinking, please don't let this be my house. Like, please don't let them be for me. And they pull up in my driveway. I have told this story so many times, I don't know why I'm crying now. Okay. They pull up in my driveway, and my whole house got quiet. And when they walk in, it's actually one. A corporal walks in, and he says, Mrs. Crittenden? And I said, that's me. And he said, your husband was killed by a drunk driver tonight. And as soon as he said that, his mom walked in at the same time. And I just fell out. And it's like, in that moment, I just seen myself by myself at our son's graduations, at their weddings, by myself sitting in the crowd. And I just was like, this can't be real. Like, this is not life. Like, this is a dream. It felt like I was in a dream. And his mom went crazy. Not went crazy, but she was like, that's not my son. Say his name. And the corporal was like, Zarel Crittenden. And from that point, I said, what am I going to do now? I have 3 boys, ages 5, 4, and 2. And now I have to tell them, I have to ruin their lives. I have to crush their little worlds. And what was so crazy is we had never really had that much alone time because our son was so young. He was 2, almost like going on 3, and he was breastfed for 2 years, so he wasn't away from me a lot. And he was finally weaned, and my husband's dad asked for the boys, and he had them for a whole week. And we hadn't had time like that with just each other for a long time. You know, having small kids, you will know. So it was literally just us for a whole week. We went to the movies in our pajamas. He played the game, and I was dancing around the house on him, like, laughing. Like, when I tell you my husband was my best friend, he was my best friend. Like, we talked to each other like we was brother and sister. People who never knew us would always be like, I thought y'all was like brothers and sisters, because we was so close. Like, he was my best friend. He wasn't just the love of my life. And in that moment, when I'm hearing the news, I'm just like, my world, like, how do I go on? Like, So my kids weren't there because, again, they were with my father-in-law. And it was almost like God prepared it that way. He prepared me to have this last week with him by myself. And I remember, after we came back from the movies that morning, we had saw Queen and Slim, ironically. But his mom was in the neighborhood jogging because we didn't live far from her. And his mom and his sister came over, and we had a conversation, and he was like, basically like, I love y'all. Y'all mean everything to me. Like, because we were so high from the emotions of the movie. And it was just like, you know, like, it felt good. But, like, the next day, I asked my father-in-law not to tell the kids. I said they should hear it from me. So if he could, don't tell them until they get here. And he had, he lives like an hour away, so he had to drive all the way here, which now that I think about it, that's a big ask. And I'm so grateful to him for being able to do that. It takes a lot of strength, I'm sure. And my house was filled with people, like filled. And it was just like noise from people talking. And like every 5 minutes I would scream, like, and it became normal. I would just scream and be like, oh my God, he's supposed to be here. Like, I couldn't help it. It was like an uncontrollable cry. But when I saw my kids pull up, oh my God, it took every fiber of my being to not cry, because I seen them run out of the car, run inside, and they're like, where's Daddy? Like, that was the first thing they said, because he was so involved in their lives. And they came to me, and I said, y'all go to my room, I got something to tell y'all. And they went to my room, and my mama was like, I'm gonna come with you. I was like, okay. So I go to my room, and I sit them down on my bed, and I tell them, I just was like, I'm gonna just be a straight shooter with them, because I don't want them to think I'm playing. Like, I need them to know this is serious. So I said, your dad was killed, he's dead, he's not coming back. And then they were like, my 5-year-old instantly started crying. It's like he knew. My 4-year-old was like, okay, can we eat? And then my 2-year-old was like, Daddy in heaven? I was like, yeah, he's in heaven. And I just was like, I love y'all so much. I don't know how we gonna get through this, but y'all got me and I got y'all. From that day forward, we just been living life. How I found out my husband was killed. The night I found out my husband was killed. Oops, hold on. So it's been 4 years now. It still doesn't feel like it's been 4 years. Like, it feels like it's been maybe a year or something. It feels very fresh still. but old at the same time. It's very hard to explain. But the woman who killed him, at first she was kind of like stringing us along because her story was somebody drugged her. She felt like somebody drugged her and she only had one small cocktail. She was blood tested at the scene and it was way above the legal limit. And she had marijuana and alcohol in her system. So I guess somebody threw a blunt in her mouth and made her smoke. But anyway, so she had a lawyer in the beginning trying to fight it, and then I guess she couldn't afford one. So then it took them 2 years to finally come to a decision where she finally was like, okay, I'm not gonna fight it. I'll plead guilty. So they did a sentencing, and we all had to write letters to explain what we wanted to happen or how this affected us, victim impact statements. And I love to write. I'm a writer. And I made sure I wanted them to feel the presence of him. I wanted them to know who he was. So I spoke of his character. And I relayed that back to the fact that I'm missing that character out of my life. And the community is missing it. Yes. And so I spoke as his wife. His mom spoke, his brother, my brother, and his sister. I think that was it. We just spoke the victim's impact. She had people speaking, and it was people who had met her 2 days before the court sentencing, saying, I let her be my baby godma. That's how much I trust her. It was a mess. Her side was a mess. But we ended up getting it out there about his character, and the judge ended up giving her 12 years. The maximum was 15. And I didn't feel like it was over, but I felt like a relief almost. Like I was tired of going to courts and missing work and trying to figure stuff out so I can be there. Because I felt like, I don't know, as his wife, I felt like I had to be to the court dates, whether it was small or not. So I made it to pretty much every single one of them. But here we are, 4 years later. My kids, my oldest is now 10, and my middle is 9, and my youngest will be 7 next month. And we are just living life as best as we could, because grief isn't like a passage. It's not something that you get over. It's something that you have to go through. And I firmly and honestly believe that you don't ever really get over it. You learn to live with it, and you learn how to carry it easier. But I would never forget him, because he had a huge impact on my life. Like, it impacted me so much that he loved me. So it only makes sense that it would impact me so much that he died. And my kids literally are little replicas of him. And he left his spirit in them because they're so loving like him. They like aggravate me the same way he do. It's the little things that they do, but I just feel like it's been a long road, and I know that we have more to go, but I'm a lot stronger than I was on that day, on that time. And at first I was angry with God, because I know that he's the giver of life, and I know that he controls life. So I was like, why didn't you save him? Like, he had 3 kids. He has me. And I had to come to knowledge that he was never completely mine. He did not belong to me. He belonged to God. And I'm still trying to get back to God, because I lost my way after my husband was killed, because I was just so confused and angry that I just was like, I can't do this. Like, as far as being a Christian, how can you say this and do this? So with so many questions going through my head, but now I'm in a place of, I'm like crawling back to him like, God, I thank you for holding me this whole time. Even though I wouldn't even talk to you, you still look out for me and my kids countless times, over and over and over and over and over again. But yeah, that's the story, and it took me 4 years to even do this. So I hope that this touches another widow or someone that lost someone very close to them, to know that they're not alone, and to know that they're not crazy if it's 4 years later and your heart still hurts like day one. But to also know that there's hope, and that you don't have to wallow in it. You don't have to be depressed. You feel it. You allow yourself to feel in that moment. And then you get up. You get up and you move on. You lean in it for that moment, and you get up and you live. Because that's what your loved one would want you to do. So that's it.